Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to HMP. Our spring cleaning continues this week as we talk about Fallout. I'm your host, Adam Porterson. Joining me today, don't ask him about his fallout with the Jackson 5. It's still too touchy. Please welcome the Hartford Hellions, Sweet Sean Zakovacs from the internet.
You know, unlike Walton Goggins, if I had no nose, I would not look the same.
No, it would kind of change the layout of everything, really.
Yeah. I'm like 30% nose, but like Walton Goggins has like the cutest little nose, so it doesn't really matter.
You ain't got to use that much green screen to get rid of my nose. I'll tell you that one right now. I'm working on my Walton Goggins. Because today we're talking about Fallout, the entirety of Season 1. Good on us, I says, because normally we get to like maybe a 2 or 3 episode kind of reviews and stuff like that, and sometimes for whatever purposes, many purposes, it falls off and we don't end up reviewing the other half of it. But lucky for you fine people, Sean and I have able to watch this entirety of Fallout Season 1, so we'll be talking about that today. Bruce is out, got a little more family stuff, should be back for an action-packed episode next week. We'll be talking about that at the end of the show. But yeah, this week we're talking about Fallout. Sean, have you played any of the Fallout games or anything like that?
I hadn't, but I'd seen it from afar where it looked very interesting to me. I knew it was post-apocalyptic. I knew there was like a weird 50s vibe to it, but I didn't really understand why that was part of it. Mm-hmm. And so when this show pops up, I was interested enough in it that I was like, you know what, I'll check out this first episode because I people whose opinions I trust tell me how great this show is. And there are people who I'd never heard say anything about a TV show ever talk about how great the show Fallout is. So I was like, well, let's give it a try. And by the first episode, I was like, well, I'm all in. This is the greatest show I've ever seen. This is the best thing I've seen this year. It's not even close.
Nice. We'll get into all of that kind of good stuff, though. Before we do get into Fallout, we do want to say a giant people to support the show over at patreon.com/HMP. Those people get pre-show, post-show, and Dinger Zone, and they get to vote on what we watch every month. And guess what? You guys voted on this. Fallout 1 with 52% of the vote, so handedly smashing all of the other ones there. We had Aquaman 2 at 22%. Mostly people were not excited about that one. But at 19%, we had a decent showing here, and a couple people saying that we might want to check out The Creator.
Oh, I do too. I definitely am going to check it out.
People said that one, so that one's at 19%. Tied for fourth is tied for fourth. We got The Beekeeper and Rebel Moon both at 4%. So both of those, The Beekeeper, everyone's like, I have not seen that movie, but I already know what it is. And so they were like, no, thank you there. And then the people who had seen Rebel Moon were like, no, thank you, sir. And just put to that one. So, so here we are at Fallout. And frankly, I think you guys made the correct choice this week. So ultimately, I have to say thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. This show is terrific.
So if you would like to be like those awesome people, head on over to patreon.com/HMP. And you guys over at the Patreon are going to get a little bit more input and stuff coming very soon, because in May, we're going to ask you guys again, what are we going to be watching? We're dragging out the last little half of HMP here. If you don't know what that means, patreon.com/HMP. It's all right there for you. It's kind of like we have the decoder rings available. You just got to go over to patreon.com/HMP and pick one up and go, oh, I see what they're talking about. It makes sense. Mm-hmm. And if you can't do that, at least jump on down to the iTunes, drop us a 5-star review, aka Humdinger.
Humdinger.
And we might have to start changing, asking people to change the reviews. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. I don't know how maybe I just like keeping those 5 stars though. You don't want to, have them sway.
No, I get it.
You don't want them to Dan do you. You know what I'm saying?
Do not Dan do us.
That started out as a 2-star. We talked it up to a 4-star.
That's a name I have not heard in a long time.
And then we talked it all the way back down to a 1. That's a good range right there. From 2 to 4 to 1. Screw us, right? I love you, Dr. Dandu. You were a source of entertainment for at least a couple of months over on all of our podcasts.
I got to do an impression of my father on the show. It was great.
Good times, man. Well, let's get into it. Here's the IMDb plotline for Fallout. As we all know, IMDb 100% correct in everything they say and or do. In a future post-apocalyptic Los Angeles brought about by nuclear Demation? Maybe that's the weird word. I don't know. Citizens must live underground in underground bunkers to protect themselves from radiation, mutants, and bandits. This is created by Graham Wagner, who did Portlandia, The Office, in Silicon Valley, as well as Geneva Robertson Duret. That's probably a French last name. She co-wrote Captain Marvel and rewrote the 2018 Tomb Raider with Alicia Vikander, which I actually like that movie quite a bit. And especially Alicia Vikander, don't hurt that movie none. But they felt like they actually got kind of the idea of what they were looking for in Tomb Raider correct in that one. So do watch those Tomb Raider movies; they're pretty fun. But again, going into this. Like I knew of Fallout, like my brother was much more of a Fallout player than I was. So like yes. I kind of knew just a side quest kind of through him and everything. I'd played a little bit of stuff, but honestly, the games are so darn big and there's a lot of asset management and stuff like that. And that just ain't for old Adam at this age. It's a lot of stuff going on. So I'm like, maybe I'll just live through others.
I've got a special treat for people with our post show.
Mm-hmm.
I have a connection to this show that I will not speak about until we hit Patreon. So I'm writing down a note to remind myself to talk about this after the show is over.
Well, he writes,
but I am linked to this show in one by 1 degree.
Very interesting.
Find out how after the show is over if you're a Patreon member.
Beautiful. Well, if that wasn't enough, let me sell everybody on this first season of Apocalyptic TV because this sucker's got everything. We got the end of the world, total nuclear annihilation. But we've got retro tech and bold graphic designs and old-timey music, so it's not all that bad. Our lead is a giant, big-eyed brunette, so naturally you got my attention. But maybe Kyle MacLachlan is a little bit more your speed. Sad Bruce isn't here to just go. Maybe, but I tell you what, maybe your bag is little dudes. I tell you what, we got Moses Aris, that kid from the Umbrella Academy, is shaking his boots on that when he sees that dude. He's like, oh no, that guy might be for my job. Not into that small a dude. How about your boy Johnny Pemberton? Huh? That guy's always fun in everything that he's in. We got a young Denzel Washington look-alike. We also got Zach Cherry. Hey, Zach, who's your agent? I'd like to know. You're really good.
Kidding.
You're really good. Everything. We love you. You're in all the great things, but I gotta say, you must give the best shoulder rubs. That's all I can imagine. But grab yourself some traveling pants because of America Ferrara is here, and she looks pissed. We got Blind Al from Deadpool. She can finally see Matt Berry. Oh, if you need me to read more, I guess I can. Okay, we got Walton Goggins, who he's entered the chat. And let me tell you, everybody, he's here with all of his scene stealing glory. And they got him an age-appropriate wife, which I was like, wow, unbelievable.
Shocking.
Very good. We've got Vault Experiments, Crazy Surface Dwellers, Pip Boys and Caps. No explanation needed. I love it. We got limb chopping, head squashing, head toting, mass undressing. Don't worry, it's creepy. We got dogs and nothing but questions like, hey, what they doing in all them vaults? This show's got everything.
It sure do. One of the things that I need to start with before we really get into the show proper is that, I'm a big sports fan, for those of you who might not know. And one of the things, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but one of the things that has been happening for the last couple of years is that everyone is starting to get concerned that, like, look, these players are getting too big. Like, that guy is 7 foot tall. He's 300 pounds. And he can run under a 5.0. Like that's not that shouldn't be humanly possible, which means that people are getting hurt more and more often because of these things, right? And it seems genetically impossible. And the reason why I bring this up is because the same thing is happening with our actresses, where you see a girl and you're like, well, that girl, like half of her face is eyes. And then you see the lead character in this, Ella Purnell, and Ella Purnell is like, oh, that's it? Because half of my face is eyes. Like literally, she looks like an alien species. Her eyes are so enormous.
Take me to your later.
They are enormous on her head. She looks like the main character from that James Cameron movie from a couple of years ago, Alita Battle Angel.
Absolutely.
She's like a real version of that character.
So good.
And it's shocking. Those aren't, when I first saw her, because I didn't know her from anything. When I first started watching it, I was like, oh, those aren't CGI. Those are just her eyes. That's literally the first thought I had.
I wasn't quite sure of her either. I not to any recollection, nothing pops out really big as what she's been. And when you look at it, you're like, oh, she's been in a couple things I've seen, but you don't quite remember any of those things. But she's really good. And like,
amazing.
I think this show can, especially with your leads, your show can live or die on these leads.
Yes.
100%. If Walton Goggins isn't doing his job, the show sucks. If she's not doing her job, the show sucks. Her counterpart, what's his name? Maximus? He's okay. I think he's going to grow more, but like that's also part of his character.
I think that this show has something that I don't think I've ever seen in a show like this before, which is that every story that's happening, you got your A plot, your B plot, your C plot in every episode. There isn't a single moment in this show where I'm like, great, we're going back to that thing again. I did not have a single moment like that watching this show.
Deftly
I
handled.
can't remember the last time that happened. I love Better Call Saul, but there are certain moments where you're like, oh man, I can't believe we're going back to this thing again.
Yeah, none of the characters are like bum out bad times or anything. You're not
and
ending up with like, oh, here's the Martez sisters. No, it's fun stuff.
Exactly. And each plot, drink, by the way, for those of you playing at home, it is the rarest of case where each plot line is interesting. Each plot line, it's like, oh, sweet, I totally forgot about that character because we didn't see them do anything last episode. Like stuff like that keeps happening to me watching this show. And if there was going to be like, I realized something about myself watching this, which is that when you see when the show or movie that you're watching is taking place, my favorite part of that movie or TV show is when your main character is just kind of walking around Oblivion, the Armageddon, and looking at things and figuring things out. It's just like quiet. It's my favorite part of any of these types of shows, of this genre show. For instance, I loved I Am Legend until the stupid things come out.
The bad CGI creatures come out. Yeah.
But watching him just go through his day was amazing. That's the best part of that movie to me.
And I think as guys too, we also, I think dudes very often have that kind of like, what if I was the last dude kind of thing.
Maybe.
I think guys think about that stuff a lot. So like when we see this sort of stuff, it really kind of resonates with us because we all think of like, well, would I do that? Would I do something different? Would I do something better? Would I do something worse? I think a lot of dudes think like that.
So I've got a term for this now, which is meandering around Armageddon is what I'm going to call this from this point forward. And this movie does it very well. Just meandering around Armageddon, or this TV show does. Because every time they're out and about and they run into someone, it's always interesting to see how they're doing that thing. Whether it's the guy who is having his way with animals, or that pretends to be a medicine doctor, that guy, or when they're crossing the bridge and they have to, both parties have to trust each other to get across the bridge without killing the other party.
Yeah, all of a sudden it just turns into the Cormac McCarthy book, and then we're just like, oh my God.
Right. And it's all of these things are great. Like I love all of these things. And they're done really well. And the show, which is already a great show, then you get the shot in the arm of Walton Goggins in this show, who, if he is not a gigantic superstar that anybody can just go, oh, I know that guy. After this, we're doing it wrong, because he is a mega wattage talent from this show. Like I think that because he's been in the business forever, since he's been in the business since the early 90s, but he kind of found his way after a while, and what his screen persona should be.
Oh, I need
And
to be a
he's
scumbag. That's right.
and he's finally there. And the fact that he's basically playing a character that Vin Diesel wants to play in every movie he's in, just 1,000 times better because Walton Goggins is a million times better actor than Vin Diesel. It must be a little itchy for Vin Diesel. Like, man, I'm getting course corrected right now by Walton Goggins.
Yeah, but at the same time, too, though, there's something I can promise you Vin Diesel's just going, you know how much money I got paid for saying I am Groot?
Oh, right.
So he's probably still hanging his hat on that one, though.
Still a better character than his character in Fast and the Furious movies. Boom! Comedy coming through.
Super depth, those Fast and Furious roles compared to Groot. I want to see him in as any lead in this show. Put Vin Diesel in this show.
He would be the worst. He would be the worst.
Destroy everything.
It would absolutely take anyone out of it like instantly. You know, and that's one of the things with this show that another thing I'm fascinated by is that this show does something that Tarantino does well, or like The Evil Dead or Shaun of the Dead, where horrible, graphic, unbelievable violence played for comedy works, because a lot of people get it wrong when they try it, but this show does it really, really well, where like oh my god, when you see something happen, and it's a pretty rare thing for me when I run across that.
Yeah, I love how like we're losing limbs and stuff left and right. It's like, oh, I cut off your finger, you cut off my finger, and then we just reattach, Frankenstein fingers to that. I love how we go to a drawer where there's a whole bunch of fingers, and he just goes, oh, this will fit you real well. Cram it right in there, and then you're losing a foot. Oh my god, him losing that foot, and then putting that contraption on there that just burrows into his. I am just like. There's so many moments in here where you're just crawling out of your skin when he's taking, when Pemberton's taking his foot out of the sock with just his crumbled foot. Oh my God. You're just, every bit of you is just running out the door. It's good though. It's exactly what it should be. But I love the video game-ness that we're kind of bringing into everything with like your healing powers and all this kind of stuff. And that just like, hey, this is how we can kind of continue to go along. This is how this person is 200 plus years old. Just kind of just roll with it, will you?
Yeah. And I wasn't sure how they were going to make that pay off. Like I get that the ghoul is 200 years old because the ghoul is, like has been nuked basically. So you never know how people are going to behave in a sci-fi movie after they've been dealing with nuclear fallout. What I couldn't understand once that turn happens where you learn that people are like, well, that would make that person 200 years old. Like, how is that? How are they going to pull that off? And once you learn the secret to that, it was like, oh wow, they really did. They've done a terrific job with this, because you have political intrigue. You have the fact that like the ghoul, when you meet Walton Goggins as the ghoul, you're like, well, that's going to be the big bad guy. And nope, you're wrong. He isn't. Like, it happens. I was so pleasantly surprised by so many parts of this show. Like, I was certain that if we were on Maximus, like every time we'd go back to Maximus after a while, I'd be like, oh my God, you're killing me. Or even when they're in Vault 33 and you're learning about the machinations of what's happening in Vault 33, I figured because of Zach Cherry and because of that actor who is like, he seems like somebody who was like underdeveloped as a human being. I mean, and his mom came out too early. Like, he looks like an unborn chicken.
God knows, yeah.
And he's great. These characters are so great on this show. Like I keep saying, it's such a surprise that when you cut between each plot line for me, I'm not rolling my eyes like, oh, great, it's another Maximus scene. Or, oh, great, it's another Vault 33 scene. And you can't hate Lucy because that actress is great, and you can't hate Walton Goggins because Walton Goggins is great. I mean, even that older African American lady who's running Vault 33, to me, she seemed like someone who was new to acting, but she's not. She's been in acting since the 60s, but she seems like not an act, like she wasn't acting. She seemed like the words were just coming out of her mouth, the way that people speak.
Oh yeah. It's just like I'm just this. Yeah, a realness to the character.
Right.
Yeah, it feels like it was coming out of a person and not like an actor portraying a person. I think that's what.
Right. So imagine my surprise when I look her up and I find out that she's Blind Al from all the Deadpool movies, and I was like, "Holy cow, that's the same person!" I never would have guessed that.
No, nor would I. And like, yeah, she's been in a gajillion things in one, but again. I think it's enough of like getting these good character actors that have like good faces and stuff, because like even like the pregnant lady, you're like invested in that story, and like you shouldn't be, I guess, in a weird way, but like because it's tangential to everything. It doesn't really have much to do with anything, but like if you're there, you don't hate it. You're not like, oh gosh, here we are. And you're right. Maximus feels like that could of all the characters, that could be the one that you're correct. If you go back to that one, could be like, oh God, because he's a guy who's kind of out of his element in so many cases and stuff. But one of the great things that this show does, and then that I also kind of liken it to what we saw with with Poor Things and stuff like that, is a lot of these characters who just don't know any better, don't know any different than what they've kind of lived with and everything, and thus also us as viewers learning things as these characters are learning things. It just makes it that much more impactful. And this kid,
hold on, because you keep jumping from subject to subject, and I want to get to something before I lose the thought.
Sure.
Which is that, when it comes to the pregnant lady, and when it comes to Lucy's brother's best friend, when they get together, they make it really interesting, because the pregnant lady keeps calling Lucy's brother's best friend by her dead husband's name, and like, put on this sweater and put on this shirt.
Well, that was
we're gonna have sex, and you're gonna pretend to be this person.
Yeah, nothing weird about that.
But I mean, that's what makes it so interesting, is that it is so strange and so weird and so funny. It's done for laughs, and it's what this show does well, is that it keeps you invested with new ideas for conveying information to you, that like, okay, so this woman is very different than who you think she is when you first meet her, because you think she's just a really nice pregnant lady who is, looking forward to her to having her baby with her young husband. But then when everything goes tits up on the show, and everybody dies, and her husband dies, and she gets an arrow to the eye, and all this stuff happens, you like, it's like, oh well, that person, like, you think you know what's going to happen with that person, and so when it turns out that she's just as nuts as everybody else, like, it's like, oh wow, what an interesting way to develop this character that I really wouldn't have cared about either way otherwise, and now she's very interesting. So let's keep watching this person.
Yeah,
and it's the trick the show keeps doing.
They've created the world really well and kind of introduced everything, and what they do so well is jumping back and forth between your different times, pre-explosion and everything, and just giving us those crumbs of the Cooper Howard character and like what he led up to before, kind of being the famous ghoul here and everything. Did I not see any of that stuff coming. Like him, like, advertising for Vault Tech and stuff. You're like, wow, that's okay, cool.
If you were to tell me, hey, I think the only reason why they hired, you think the only reason why they hired Walton Goggins to play the ghoul in the first place is because he's a good actor and he can pull it off and he can do both characters well. But actually, I think the reason why they hired him in the first place is because he does look a lot like the logo of Fallout, and that is what. Yeah. And so when you learn that he is the actual logo of the Fallout video game and of this series, it's like, it blew my mind. it blew my mind how well that was pulled off. And you know, I don't think that you watched much Westworld, right?
I watched the
That
first season.
right. I watched the first season also, and I'm fearful of, because with Jonathan, man,
Nolan.
names to me today. Thank you, Jonathan Nolan. The first season of Westworld is great. All the other seasons are not, and I'm hoping that with him as showrunner, that he is able to, like, oh, I've learned my lessons.
Yeah. Do the right things. Don't just kind of, like I said, I didn't get too much into season 2, so I wasn't quite sure where things went off, but I do know people were just kind of like, oh, not as good as 1.
It's not. Like, the first season of Westworld is so great, and the first season of this is great, but I'm really hoping for more of this, what we got for season 1. It's just so terrific.
Now, coming from not knowing anything video game wise, I know a little bit more. What were your kind of thoughts with like your Pip-Boy and caps and stuff like that? Like different terminology that I don't think would mean much to the people that haven't played the games, but how did that kind of translate for you?
Well, I got the caps thing pretty fast because they explain it really well. The Pip-Boy thing, I don't know what you mean when you say that.
Well, just so that's what that is that's the little thing that they wear on their arm, their little gauntlet that's got all their information and stuff in it.
I forgot. Sorry. Yes, I know. I think that it's all explained so well on the show so quickly, and it's done visually for the most part.
Yes,
for 90% of this stuff, it's just very clever filmmaking. It's very clever storytelling, and you know, you don't have to change the world with your movie or TV show. Just don't insult my intelligence. And this show never does that. It's yet another thing for me where, like, I'm not rolling my eyes. Like when everybody loved the movie Twister, when I was like in college and everybody loved the movie Twister, it felt like I was taking crazy pills, because that movie is so stupid. That movie is so unbelievably dumb. And it seemed like that's where everything was going. So when something like this comes up, like Fallout, where it's like, oh, we're going to trust your intelligence enough that we're not going to spoon feed you stuff or come up with plots that are the dumbest thing you've ever heard of. Like, let's say there's a Twister that killed your father, and you want revenge on that same exact Twister that killed your father 20 years ago.
It makes sense to me.
So that's what I mean by this. And so when something like this comes across, like when I'm trying to pitch something like this to someone who I don't know very well, I just say to them, it is the coolest, best show, and you are totally missing out. That's all I will say to them when it comes to a show like this, because I've learned over time, you can't use words like the best show ever, or like stuff like that. Like, you can't say stuff like that because people are like, well, I immediately don't like it then.
Yeah.
And this is one of those shows where it's just like, it's really cool, and you're missing out if you don't see it.
I don't know how good the information can be, but this show's got to be unbelievably expensive.
I don't know the answer to that, but I would think that you're probably looking at just under the last season of Game of Thrones money being used on this show.
Yeah, because I mean, like, there's actual like mini sets being built and stuff like that, and it's just like a lot. Like, I mean, the vault stuff alone, there's several vaults alone that they're having to deal with and everything.
Well, the vaults, they're tricking you, because the vaults, they're just using the same sets over and over again.
Yeah, they could probably just redress, I would imagine.
Right, but in different camera angles. But for things like when you're going into Border Town or whatever that place is, Philly, when you're going into Philly. Like that set, they're only there for the one episode, and then they come back briefly for another episode, and not even that long, not even that long. So like, you're burning through production money pretty dang fast on this show. And I would think that just the fact that it got greenlit for season 2, this is the best thing to me. This is the best thing that Amazon Prime has ever made. Like, this is their show. What they wanted their stupid Lord of the Rings thing to be,
oh man,
is what this show actually is.
Yeah, the fun that we're having with this show is what they wanted people to have with Lord of the Rings. They were like, "Oh, listen, this is going to be great. People know this. It's a franchise that's already kind of well established and everything. We'll just give people what they want." And then they don't, and then we're like, "We don't want this. What is this? Why did you decide that this was what we wanted?" And it's not. But the funny part is I'm hearing there's a small, very small contingency of people that have a couple of like nitpicks and complaints with this show, and they're so stupid and dumb.
I mean, we're used to that from being comic book nerds. Like,
oh yeah,
I mean, I remember all the like he's not a blonde guy. Like you would hear stuff like that in the early 2000s, and it's like just let it go.
They're like in this one. They're like the mask.
A black guy now. Get out of here.
The mask for the night opens in the front. That's not correct. And like that's what you're complaining about. Go talk to the people that watch the Halo show on Paramount Plus. Talk to them. Those people, those are people that got legit complaints and real gripes. There's like, hey, a character that never takes his helmet off. Nope, we're gonna have him with his helmet off all of the time. Main characters in stories doesn't matter. We're gonna kill them off. Who cares?
Do you think that the makers of the Halo show look at this show and are like, crap, they actually did it?
I think so. I hope most of these shows, like between like this and your blah 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 blah, the HBO, I played the damn game. Last of Us. Between this and Last of Us, give us like examples of how you can take a video game property and make it. Now, Last of Us is obviously a lot easier to adapt than Fallout would be. This is actually an uphill battle. Like, Last of Us, you can just go translate game into movie. Done. This, you're going, take this first person shooter and make it applicable to everybody. And you're like, okay, wow. Good luck. I wouldn't have come up with this. And I think it's just being able, I love these characters figuring out what all the different vaults are for and how, and again, they don't really explain that. They don't set it up early. They let these events unfold within this show. And that is ultimately where I think this show wins the most. And the thing that, like you said, keeps you coming back for this more and more is they parsed out the show perfectly. You have the beginning stuff where before the nuclear explosion, so you set up Walton Goggins' character, then we get into this past, and then we kind of can keep going back and forth, learning more and more stuff about his character and everything. And obviously within that 200 years distance, there's a lot of stuff that's going on. And I think that's also very cool. It's like, we can explore a whole bunch of stuff at this point. Because the Greater Adventures of the Ghoul is a show I would watch.
Well, I mean, this is his show. I mean, ultimately, yeah, Lucy's the main character, but come on, Walton Goggins this is his show.
He's first on the call list. Come on,
for sure he is, and I think that they also did the thing really. They hide their writing, which the Nolans are pretty famous for. Where you think that the reason why the Ghoul hates all the people that are in the vaults is because they locked him out of the vaults 200 years ago. Mm-hmm. But no, you learn later this is why he actually hates them. And that's just such great writing. It's just so good.
And I love the little serums and stuff. We kind of give him like, his weakness and everything, which is great. So we can kind of hold that over. But also we inform who the Lucy character is of like, she goes, listen, it's the golden rule. You do unto others as you would have them do to you. And so on her way out, drops those things out. But ultimately, though, the good part is, again, great story writing for the show is it leads to something. You think that she is going to need him later on in the story, and what a great way for her to just kind of show you who that character is and give an excuse for that character to come back and rejoin with her later.
Right, and that happens over and over again, where there's a little thing that happens on the show, and you don't really think much of it when it's going down, and then it becomes a much bigger deal later, whether it's good or bad. And that's the kind of thing that I really love to see watching something like this. It rewards you for paying attention to it. Mm-hmm. And that's the best kind of show there is to me, or movie. Where hey, we know your time is limited. So thank you for watching our show. We're not going to make you feel like an idiot for watching it.
And it's not limited to. I had a thought and totally lost it.
Okay.
Oh well.
I'm wondering if because I know that Fallout New Vegas is considered probably the best one of these games. I'm wondering if there are people who want to go back and give those games that they didn't like another try because the show is so good.
I've heard as such. I've heard there's been some, people are like, oh, maybe we ought to check out these games and stuff now because a lot of folks, had no real prior connection to them or anything like that. And they're an interesting set of games, especially if you kind of go back to the over the head view and everything, like the way back ones. Because again, this is a series that's been back since that was, a thing where you're just like, nope, that's as good a graphics as we can get. Ooh.
Right.
All the way up to great current gen games and stuff like that, and they've just kind of evolved and stuff, and just made this really great kind of RPG and everything. That's not a lot of people have been doing it as well as the folks over at Bethesda have, and like they've kind of earned their reputation, to be honest.
Well, that's kind of what they're known for, right? That Bethesda is really good at making games, and they don't treat their people terribly.
Yeah, that seems to be.
That's how they are in my head. I don't know how true that is, but they're one of the better companies when it comes to their own people.
And they're always a group that, like, when they're coming out with something, you have to go like, okay, let's at least see what they're doing over there at Bethesda, because they tend to have their heads on straight for the most part. Some people go say otherwise for some things, but different strokes for different folks.
So the guy that is Titus's sidekick, I don't know what the actual name of his job is called. I can't remember. But the guy's following around Titus. That's actually Maximus pretending to be Titus.
Right. Thaddeus is the character's name.
Thaddeus, right. Mm-hmm. That actor is Johnny Pemberton. Pemberton?
Correct.
Pemberton. Mm-hmm. And he is the rare kind of actor that every time you see him in something, you just want to punch the guy in the face.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how he gets the roles he gets. He just has a really great punchable face. And I think that we're going to be seeing him for a long time, because even though right now he's fairly young, he already looks kind of like an old man.
Yeah, he's got a little beat up quality to him.
So it seems like he's we're going to be seeing him get the crap beat out of him in movies and TV shows for many, many decades to come, I think, because he's great in this. I can't stand that guy when you first meet him. You hate that guy.
Oh yeah.
But then like later on, he's like, hey, I sure wish that we would have treated him better. And then when he reveals who he actually is, he immediately is like,
you piece of garbage.
Yeah, you're a piece of crap.
He's just like, nope. Already, I have like you kept looking. I don't know about you, but I kept going like, how long is he going to be able to pull this ruse off?
I did not want to see. There was a movie that completely breaks that tradition, where like at the like towards the third act, the reveal happens, and then the main character has to face the consequences, kind of a thing. Mm-hmm. But there's one movie that breaks that, which is The Man Who Knew Too Little. That Bill Murray movie, when Bill Murray really wasn't making good movies anymore for a while, before the Wes Anderson resurgence. And that movie breaks all the rules, where the man who knew too little is never wise to what's happening. Ever. The entire movie happens, and there's never that 3-act structure where, like, it is revealed, oh, you don't know as much as you think you know. You're actually an idiot. And then he has to solve the crime anyway. Mm-hmm. That never happens in that movie. And so I call that the man who knew too little syndrome, whenever, like, how much longer are they going to go with this? And that movie's always in the back of my head. That movie is awful. Don't ever see that movie. Just know that that's what happens in that movie, is he never learns his lesson.
I like never learned your lessons. Johnny, old Johnny Pemberton does a little stand-up comedy as well.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of stand-up comedians I want to punch in the face.
Yeah. So, but he's what little bit of stand-up I've seen from him, some funny stuff. Funny enough.
Good.
Better than what your average kind of. You never know. you never know, man. Sometimes you're like, oh. Thank heavens you have some punchlines and stuff in there. But I think he leans also into kind of like who he is, what he kind of looks like and stuff like that, which I think is smart. But he's
yeah. Oh, he's smart to do it.
But to answer your question, he's like my age, so.
Oh, is he?
Yeah, it's a little older than I would expect it, but yeah, he does look like he's got that young and old look at the same time.
Yeah, he does. It's the look that you want because he's weird looking.
Yeah, it's like you could be 45 or you could play like 28.
Yeah, he's what Hollywood used to put in the high school role.
Yeah,
where it's like that guy's 40 and he's in your high school movie. What are you doing?
Listen, man, if you put him around the right size high school kid, I might buy it. Them high school kids is big these days. I don't know what it is. I delivered some cake and stuff to like different schools and whatnot. You go around these middle schools and stuff, these kids are ginormous. Unbelievable. I don't know what they put in them kids' lunches at the school, but my God, it's got some growth hormone or something in it because they're growing up big over there. So Johnny Pemberton,
holy crap. Lucy's brother, the actor who plays Lucy's brother, Moises Arias, is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Moises Arias. He has been around forever. He's in Nacho Libre.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Dude's been he's one of those you look at him and he's got a face. He's got one of them faces that he could easily be one of those character dudes that you see in something like that. Can I say something? This is without maybe seeming weird. I love this little guy. He's just a tiny little guy and like just the perfect little package of a tiny man, and I kind of love it. He's just like adorable. He's got like a really he looks like he's thinking all the time, which is great because it feels like that character's like really into it and stuff. And so I think he's fantastic.
If they're ever going to do a live action Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer, here's your Hermie right here. This is your actor. That's right. He wants to be a dentist. That's all.
Man.
Pretty good casting. You're welcome, everybody.
Mike what's his name? Jerry Bruckheimer's like, write that down. Because that's who would be doing that movie too.
The voice of Rudolph is going to be played by somebody ridiculous. If it's Jerry Bruckheimer.
I was kind of like, again, I want to mention his Walton Goggins' wife in this. She was really good.
She's great.
She was really good. So appropriately aged in Hollywood. So lovely to see that.
It is. It's so good. And when you meet her for the first time, where he's having that scene at the craft services table, such a good way to introduce that character. I've got to say, if you want me to be half on board before I ever know what you're doing, use retrofuturism, and I'm going to be. I'm already halfway there for whatever your project is.
It's so.
I
good.
love retrofuturism. It is so cool. If Tomorrowland was a better movie, because I love the look of the things in Tomorrowland, I just hate the plot of that movie. It's awful.
Yeah, I can't remember it. I just remember it being boring and like 15 minutes in going like, oh, this is going to be the rest of the movie, isn't it?
There's a secret level of reality or something. I can't remember. It was so dumb.
Swing and a miss, Brad Bird. So sorry.
I know it, since he's usually a hit machine for me. I was kind of looking forward to it at the time, but man, that movie is not good. It's his worst movie. It's Brad Bird's worst movie.
But you're right. The bitch of it is that there's just elements in there where you're just like, oh, something cool could be in this, but it ain't it.
No, I know. And who's cooler for retrofuturism than George Clooney, for God's sake?
It's like it fits right
seems
in.
like an easy win. But man, that plot is bad.
They're like, nah, no, thank you.
Bad script.
But yeah, I love the design of everything. I come so much off of the video games and stuff, which I again, big props to them for like leaning into everything that was like, because you know how stuff could go. You could adapt this to something and like, we don't want those yellow and blue suits and stuff. It's like, no, that stuff makes it. Things like this make this show and make Fallout specifically these things. Again, it would be like taking Master Chief's helmet off. Not something you're supposed to do.
Right.
You want to lean into the things that you want to do.
Right.
Unreal.
Have you seen there's that thread going around on Reddit where guy hates the poster for Fallout, and it's shot from behind, like you're looking at Ella Purnell in her Vault 33 costume.
Mm-hmm.
And he couldn't stand it the way that her butt looked. So he photoshopped her butt so it's like big and round, and she looks like, she's one of those rap guys' girlfriends. and he's like, there we go, better. And people just sometimes the internet is amazing and great. And this is one of those times where people are like, dude, what are you doing? Like, this is literally just for you. And you thought that, and that's why you did it, and that's fine. But the fact that you made it public because you're like, hey, everyone's going to be on my side for this, it shows just how stupid you actually are. It's yet another moment where I'm like, so people badmouth the internet a lot, but there's a lot of good to it.
Sometimes
this is one of those moments.
Yeah, that's what I say. It's the best and worst invention ever. It's really, really good, and it's really, really bad. Speaking of bad, I was awful bad because you know what? I'm terrible. I'm gonna sit there and I'm gonna call myself out right now. I feel bad. I feel bad. Feel terrible. That's not America Ferrara. I apologize.
No.
I apologize. She favors her a little. She does. The haircut with the eyebrows and the face. She looks. I just thought they aged her up and made her for the, she'd lived 200 years or something.
Right.
Incorrect. No. Chantra
Sarita
Chowdhury.
Chowdhury?
She's good. She's not America Ferrara though. Mucho apologies for me. Sorry about that, everybody.
She's on Homeland. She's Saul's wife.
Oh, is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. I love the music. I love the again. This
so good.
Goes back to original kind of Fallout stuff with everything. Just beautiful. Just the perfect bits. And again, it goes into the future retroism of everything. We're having music from the 30s and 20s and stuff, infusing that with stuff in the way first 22nd century at this point with everything. And it's very cool.
Like, how there's certain shows that just completely own a style of music.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that champagne music that plays for Always Sunny in Philadelphia.
Oh, yeah.
If you ever hear that music anywhere now, you're like, well, that's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. And for this could be that show where you hear music that sounds like Christmas music, but is in fact not actually Christmas music. It will be part of Fallout. You'll think of Fallout.
And I wonder what it does for, because I kind of want to see it. They're always still same kind of error when we got into that was BioShock.
Oh, they did the same thing for BioShock. They used that music.
Yeah, there's a lot of kind of there's a lot of retrofuturism stuff, but underwater. Which is really cool. And then again, you have the whole there's a lot of like some Orwell sort of stuff, some Ayn Rand sort of stuff. It's like all kinds of like weird and interesting things. What's his name from the Pirates movie was going to direct it at one point.
Oh, really?
Yeah, way back when. So that movie.
Yeah, the guy who directed Rango also.
Yeah, he was going to do that. He was going to do a BioShock, and everybody's like, "Ooh, that guy would be a good choice for that." And by the way, the girl that's in this looks like the girl who was in the BioShock Infinite. So again, these are more just video game things for the handful of people that'll go like, "Yeah, she does look like that girl."
When you say the girl, do you mean Ella Purnell? Is that
yes?
Lucy McLean,
which by the way, Lucy McLean, hello, lovely, hilarious. It is Lean MacLean. So, but it's not the unfortunate Lucy McLean here, McLean residence.
Exactly, you're talking to the biggest diehard fan you know. So the second that Lucy McLean's name came up, I was like, oh wow,
just so good. I was like, all right, I'm all for this. Colin McLaughlin, we didn't really talk about any. Nice seeing him back and stuff.
What I want to know is that for Kyle MacLachlan. Does he have to audition for this part, or do they just give it to him? Is he that big a name now, do you think?
Oh, he's got to be big enough at this point.
Is he? Because the only thing that I really ever know him from is from all of the Dune stuff and that director. Like I only know him from all of that. Like there's nothing really else I know him from.
I mean, that's obviously your big one there and everything, but I don't know. Maybe he's just kind of become one of those guys, you know?
Yeah.
Where they're just like, hey, you once did something. If you can come in. Oh God, I can't believe it. We almost talk about, let's get to the real one of those dudes in this show. When Eric Estrada shows up, son.
Oh, man, pulling a performance of a lifetime for that guy.
I almost flipped out up, man. It was insane. I'm like, first of all, he's in something that has a budget over $100,000. Good for you.
Yeah.
Second of all, son is acting. I'm like, wow.
Like actually acting, not winking at the camera like, hey, I know I'm better than this, but here I am.
But no, he looks like, I mean this in a good way.
He looks great.
Yeah, he looks great, terrible great. You know what I mean? Because they made him up to look like he's, strung out to the end of humanity as the character would be. But so good. I was just big shocked. And then the other great cameo of what's
Matt Berry.
What's that?
The Matt Berry.
The Matt Berry one, yes. But the other Chris Parnell is the one-eyed.
Oh, Chris Parnell is the one-eyed guy.
Which, by the way, is it not insanely weird that you've got your one eye, it's in the middle, but yet still two independent eyebrows?
Well, he didn't. It's not natural selection that got him there. It's nuclear fallout that got him there. So he's gonna be, that's gonna happen.
The weird Fred Armisen cameo, love that.
Man, oh man, he. I don't know. I'm going to say something that's going to make some people mad.
Okay.
I don't know if he's ever done anything that's made me laugh, but I like him. I don't know how funny Fred Armisen is, but I think that I still like him anyway. There's several moments where I've just like, when he played that dictator or whatever with the straight to jail little monologues that he did, is like where he would go through every offense and like, you will not believe it, but straight to jail. Very, very funny. But like I think you're right. There's like, he's an odd duck, Fred Armisen. Yeah. But at the same time too, like listening to that horrible, fiddle music and everything, and him and like just the awful sour notes throughout all of it. Mm-hmm. I also see Fred Armisen, the man, really digging on that and stuff, because he is like a weird music guy and stuff too. He's a strange, but he's infinitely fascinating to me, Fred Armisen, because like, I don't know what his actual real life personality is. I think he's just, I feel like he's an alien, like in a fun way. He got on the show because one of the co-producers and writers of the show was a writer and co-producer on Portlandia, and I'm sure she called him and was like, "Hey, can you do us a favor and just show up here?" And so I'm sure that's what happened.
Oh, and I was also talk about using the voice changer to the abilities and everything. When Michael Rappaport is underneath the night costume,
oh man,
who saw that one coming?
Man. I know, it's not even a Spike Lee movie and he's in it. Unbelievable.
It was just like, wow, you took 5 minutes out of your day to do this one. Rappaport, good for you. Good for you.
Yeah.
He's an interesting guy. That's all I'll say about him. There's part of me that would love and hate to have a couple beers with that guy. I think it could be great, and it could be very, very bad.
It could.
And I think you'd be flipping a coin as to which would be which in that particular
like, I think it depends on the day, quite honestly.
Yeah. Just get them on the right time and you're having a good one. You hit them on the other right time, not so much. Well, let's get it. Before we get to our final review of Season 1 of Fallout, we have to ask ourselves one very important question: is how does this Amazon Prime television show relate back one-to-one with Sylvester Stallone?
Why, thank you, Adam. I have a prepared statement.
Oh.
Okie dokie, Mr. Stallone. Today, I'd like to talk to you about casting director John Papsadera. He's been working in the casting department of TV and film since 1995, but more recently, he worked on the Suicide Squad, which you were also involved in. And there's your Stallone connection this week. But the thing I'd like to talk to you about is the 2020 John Paps. Was that in night? Man, every time now, I used to be able to get through these no problem. But the thing I'd like to speak with you about this week is that in 2020, John Papsadera was the casting director of the Vin Diesel turd log called Bloodshot.
Ooh.
A movie that holds the distinction of being the last movie I saw in the movie theater before the world shut down. I don't know if you're even aware of this movie. It's probably in the top 10 of worst films I've ever seen in a theater. Vin Diesel clearly doesn't want to be in it. I didn't want to see it. And I'm pretty sure the other people who were watching it with me that day were hiding from the authorities like a modern day John Dillinger. I've seen plenty of bad movies, but why Bloodshot holds a different level of anger on my part is because for about 6 months, it was the last movie I saw in a movie theater. And while I was pretty sure movie theaters would start up again, that wasn't a sure thing. It wasn't certain. There's a puncher's chance that them days was over and that Bloodshot, the movie that Vin Diesel didn't even bother to show up for in costume, would be the last thing I saw. And yes, I could blame Vin Diesel for everything, and I probably should, and I don't think anyone will blame me for this. I've never made it a secret that I think Vin Diesel and The Rock are responsible for some of the worst movies the world has ever seen for the last 20 years. But really, at least some part of the blame can be placed at the feet of John Papsadera. True, he didn't cast Vin Diesel. That was the studio. The movie studio did that. But does anyone remember Isa Gonzalez as KT in that movie? Because I don't. She's number 2 billed in that movie. Guy Pearce is the bad guy in that movie. And I didn't even remember that fact until I looked at Bloodshot's IMDb page, and it jarred loose a random memory of Guy Pearce attempting to match the sleepwalking that Vin Diesel is doing while shooting this mediocre-filled, talentless loaf of a talkie. And who's responsible for that? John Papsadera. He offered up these names so he can be blamed for it. He's gone on to do some great work on projects like Yellowstone, the Yellowstone spinoff, 1897 or whatever it's called, because I refuse to look it up. He also provided casting for the other Yellowstone spinoff, Space 1999 or whatever that's called.
I would watch that show.
So the next time you're watching a rerun of Prison Break and you think to yourself, wow, Jodie Lynn O'Keefe is really miscast in this. Remember, part of that blame goes to John Papsadera, because he brought her into the room in the first place. Because Jodie Lynn O'Keefe is a good actor. But Jodie Lynn O'Keefe shouldn't be in Prison Break. And that's your Stallone connection this week. Casting director John Papsadera. I hope to hear from you soon. We only have 4 weeks of this left. Your pal, the Hartford Hellion.
I wish that show would have been better. But
Prison Break?
Yeah, I mean, like if it was just like the first season, they just kind of did like a big maxi series or whatever, and like you just did your first season and done. That's what it should
be, right? It should be 12 episodes of a show and done.
Yeah, it would have been. It would have been really great because like the premise is good. All the elements were there. It's just like once they got out of the jail, they're like, well, shit, what do we do now?
Yeah.
Well, the show's over is what it is. It's called Prison Break. They're like, we're going to lock them in another prison. They're going to have to get out of that one.
Is that what happened on that show?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
Wow.
They went to another prison for season 2, if memory serves. Ugh, no, thank you.
But he has the big tattoo on his back. How are they supposed to get out now?
I don't know. But I will say this, though. They had a little phone number on there that you could call in which this show also has a phone number. Somebody called it on TikTok. I saw it, but I don't know what happened. But the little number that you see on the screen, go ahead and call that number. You can do that. It leads you to a thing. Just like in Prison Break, it led you to him leaving like a voicemail or something like that. I like when shows do little silly, stupid things like that. So fun. Here at H&P, we have our own patented Robin rating system. Sean, where does Fallout Season 1 fall on the Robin rating system for you?
This is Dick Grayson. This is the best thing I've seen as far as like regular TV shows go. This is the best. It doesn't get better than this. Like, you're not going to out Fallout. Like, they've done it.
Yeah.
You know, they're going to make a season 2. Hopefully it's at the same level that this is. But if it isn't, we've still got the first season of Fallout. This thing is just perfect. It's not something that's going to change your life, but it sure is fun as hell watching it. And so for me, it's a Dick Grayson.
There's enough great little elements in it, and it definitely is the sum of its parts. All of this stuff is good, but all of this stuff put together and orchestrated the way that it is what makes the show work. And that's just, just the deft hands at play with this. And that's what was so refreshing to me because we don't see that a whole bunch these days. And again, 8 episodes was perfect. It gets us nice in that nice little hot spot right there. You're good to go. The only problem is that we got to wait for season 2. Yeah. So Dick Grayson for me as well. Super
nice,
good.
Really.
Yeah. I'm shocked at how much I enjoyed it. I thought I was going to enjoy it, but real good.
To me, I really thought to myself, well, nothing is going to beat The Last of Us. Like, that 3rd episode of The Last of Us is some of the best writing we've ever seen from a series television show. And I was like, the fact that you're going back to this well with another video game show that you put a lot of budget into, like, this is a huge mistake. But I wanted to see it anyway because I'd heard good things. But my God, man, like, they really pulled it off. There's 2 great video game things now. It's incredible.
Yeah, and hopefully that'll start to trickle into people's minds of, like, you want to give them something that's closer to the thing that they like.
Yeah.
If you change stuff up too much, it's like it no longer is the thing that you were interested in to begin with. Now, you don't want it to be verbatim, but that's also the cool thing about, like, this with Fallout and stuff is, like, it ain't a 1-to-1 like your Last of Us. Last of Us is practically the movie's the game and the game and the movie, kind of more or less.
I don't know Fallout enough, the game. I don't know it enough. Does it have, how Marvel pulls that trick off of, like, look, this is not the exact thing like Civil War, right? Like, the Civil War comic books, that whole miniseries that was happening in Marvel at the time is so totally different than the Civil War in the Marvel movies.
Right.
But the feeling of it is there.
Enough of the generalized elements to go, oh, this is familiar enough, but not so retready,
So I'm wondering if Fallout accomplishes that, is my question. The TV show, does it match the feeling of the game?
It does to me. It does to me, of, like, because you have that, like, your inner vault world and everything, and then you're going out and you're going into this dangerous place. You do have these limited resources, and a lot of that is kind of just, managing your resources, exploring, this desolate place and everything, and coming across these wild and crazy creatures that could just, eat your face right off. And then all the different, story machinations within that. Again, I was more of a watching other folks play and enjoy it, and, like, enjoying that stuff from afar, and again, that's way too many hours for me to throw into a game. I'd love to do it, but not these days.
Yeah, I get it, man. It's the reason why I didn't start playing Fallout New Vegas, is that you can play it if you have a PlayStation subscription, you can play it for free. But I cannot get into it.
It's just called, all right, go ahead and set yourself apart some time. And it's like,
I do not have the time.
Not these days, unfortunately. Waiting for us to get rich, hit that lotto coming on. That's got to happen sometime soon, right? Anyway.
Sure.
Hopefully you felt like you've hit the lotto with this episode here and everything. Cash in your chips. Will you head on over to patreon.com/HMP. Help support this show and see where we're going in the future. In the meantime, we'll talk about what we're going to do next week. Sean, tell us about the Acolyte. What in the world's going to happen with that thing?
So we are, as hard to believe as this is, we are a month away from a brand new Star Wars show called The Acolyte. That it could be good. It could be bad. We don't know. I don't have my hopes way up for it.
No, you can't.
We'll see. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it'll be great. I don't know. The only thing that I really have my hopes sky high for is the second season of Andor. That's really the thing now where I'm like, listen, if I have hope in my heart, it's for Andor season 2. Anything else Star Wars, look, it's going to be it's not going to affect my life either way. But hopefully it's going to be great. We have a podcast about that show called The Acolyte 30 Questions, Star Wars 30 Questions, where we ask 30 questions of the latest episode of The Acolyte when it premieres in a month. So check that out, won't you?
I just hope we go back and Andy Serkis is still just treading water.
I know that he's well, I don't want to ruin it for everybody, but I know that he's been signed on for season 2. So I would really love it if he was dead and just like in Andor's head. That'd be amazing, but I don't think that's going to be the case.
Treading water or holding on to the door of the Titanic. One of those.
Exactly.
Things.
That's what Star Wars does. Actually, what Star Wars would have done is that they put him in a bacta tank, and now he's fine. That's how they'll do it.
He fell into the belly of a big fish, and then we got him out. We put him in a bacta tank. 20 minutes later, wouldn't you know it, fresh as a daisy.
Totally fine. Look at him.
He can go for 5 more seasons. No, I don't want to go for another 5 seasons. You shut up. You have to. So go check that out. Next week we're jumping into some crazy stuff. The last little bit of HMP we're gonna go a little bit wild and crazy here, and we're gonna start that out with a show that Sean watched way back in the day. That what made you pick this?
Because this is one of the things that I always wanted to do for this show. Is that Automan was a superhero that was created by Desi Arnaz Jr. on the show. I can't remember his character's name, but when I was 8, this is the greatest show ever because he was a superhero that had a super cool car and fought crime, and he came out of a computer, and it was the greatest thing I'd ever seen. So we're going to watch the pilot episode and the second episode of Automan next week, and I've got my hope sky high. I'm sure it's just as good as it was when I was a kid. I'm sure it won't ruin any of my childhood things that I love. So Automan episode 1 and 2. I cannot wait. It's going to be amazing.
You also
on
run
YouTube if you want to watch it.
Yeah, you also run the risk of it also just being everything you wanted and more.
It's true. It could be one of those things where I'm like, why did I keep watching TV shows? They literally nailed it.
They've been putting it on free for YouTube forever. Why have I been wasting my time watching, I don't know, what's on television these days? ER. ER. Should have been on the air in 30 years.
ER. The Adventures of Briscoe County Jr.
Oh, man, I'd watch that show again. That is it, everybody. Join us next week when we're talking the first 2 episodes from Automan from 1983 for the absent Bruce Leslie and Shaw, the Hartford Helly and Shaw, sweet shot the Kovacs from the internet. I'm in a portrait. Stay super, everybody.
Bye, Marty and Evie.